Murder Drones is very fun.
That's everyone!
That was an actual child. This show is unhinged, and I love that for it. You know, we might be on the cusp of a golden age for independent animation. If people have the vision, the time, and all the money, anything is possible. We get blessed with some just fire TV shows, with Murder Drones definitely being one of my favorites that I've discovered recently, as it's basically tailor-made for my sick sense of humor. Hey, Dad! Telling the story of a group of robots who recently gained sentience, they celebrate discovering their own mortality by avoiding it, as humanity has sent a group of extermination drones to wipe them out. Created by Liam Vickers and produced by Glitch Productions, Murder Drones is real good, combining fun characters, funnier writing, and an ever-expanding mystery. With genuinely unnerving horror elements. You can never really predict where this show is going, and it's just an engaging watch. So if you're wondering, yes, I'm telling you guys to go frickin' watch it. It's just on YouTube, it's literally a click away. This video though, is mostly me just playing review catch-up. So yeah, there's gonna be a ton of spoilers, and this is a show you really wanna go into blind. It's a blast, the main character is Jimmy Neutron with angst, and yes, they're ships, naturally.
Not like you killed anyone.
Oh, no, I definitely...
Kidding! Just avoid another whole spire.
First off, when we talk about the pilot, we have to talk about the absolute terror that is the show's main character, Uzi. Uzi at the start of the series feels like she would have been the villain or rival of any other show. Arrogant, antisocial, and single-mindedly driven to kill something. It's only thanks to the fact that her enemies are attempting genocide that she gets to be the hero of her own show. However, besides that villainous facade, we quickly begin to unpack the angsty mess of issues that is Uzi, as we really discover what makes her tick and the anxiety and fears that lie beneath. As she is forced to grow up in a vault her entire life just waiting to die, her mom is already resting in pieces, her classmates are almost as bad as her, and her dad straight up sucks.
Dad?
You kind of get in the pilot alone why Uzi is so hostile. You get enough moments of vulnerability to see that she isn't as on top of things as she pretends to be. With her struggling to deal with something as small as having a crush on a boy, who I'm now just gonna call the runner-up, for reasons. Uzi is great, she is fun, she is an absolute joy to watch. Though I will say though, for as much as I like this show's sense of humor, I do feel like it was written for people who have TV tropes on favorite, as they name drop tropes more than me, and I do this for a living.
That was the lamest heel-face turn in history. I'm an angsty teen fad, bite me. Like that before.
I'm fine with it, but I can definitely see how this might be a bit too on the nose for some people. For me, it adds to the performative part of Uzi's personality, as she is trying so hard to be cynical that even when she's in a dangerous situation, she refuses to acknowledge it and does so by directly calling out the trope that's happening. Uzi is an adorable angsty psycho who is way too into violence. But as the show goes on, you realize that she is somehow one of the more peaceful members of the team. Which brings us to the best of best boys, N.
Did you just slap me with that arm?
Holy crap, it talks.
N is great. One of the initial murder drones who have been terrorizing the workers for years, killing their wives, husbands, children, just about anything that moves, and living in a nest made out of their victims. The murder drones are hyped up so much to be the most terrifying, ungodly things imaginable. They are basically angels of death, and N just completely shatters the idea of the murder drones being these unholy abominations.
And yet, I still feel nothing.
Like, the other two are freaks, but N is a sweetheart. While Uzi is drenching herself in cynicism, N is sincere and open to almost a fault, refusing to believe the worst in his co-workers even as they continually mistreat him. But it's thanks to meeting Uzi and head trauma that the two are able to gain some perspective, with Uzi realizing that the murder drones are just as much a tool for the humans as the worker drones are. They are both fully disposable in the grand scheme of things. While N, meanwhile, after he realizes his error,
are we the baddies?
With the two of them then coming together as they have to stop the other two drones. As Uzi accidentally let them in, and N questioning the company led to his boss trying to kill him. But despite the impalement and near-death experience, Uzi finally has someone to believe in her, with the two stopping his co-workers in a dope action scene that does, and this is just a show in general, I feel like the show is abusing the lens flare option. It's good, but there is just so many. I almost thought, oh, I can make a drinking game out of this, but 5 minutes after I thought of that rule, I realized that I would literally die. But overall, the animation is going off. This show is stellar in how it's able to capture just little details that you wouldn't expect, from the subtle things like light bouncing off the characters as they are made out of metal, to the lighting just highlighting the mood in every scene, to even its use of distortion and particle effects to enhance what would otherwise be just standard anime powers. The level of polish on this show is insane. You would show this to any casual viewer and they'd assume this is a fully funded, syndicated production. It's crazy how good it is. From the fights to the direction, it's all going off, and most importantly, Murder Drones as a show is keenly aware of the strengths and weaknesses of CGI. It's not one of those shows where it feels like it's trying to replicate a certain style. The people behind it know what they want to achieve, and does so without ever feeling like it's reaching for something that they don't have the time or the resources for. Though again, it is the writing that really makes this show a winner for me.
N, you're worthless and terrible. And if the company allowed it, I would straight up kill you myself.
Jay's awesome.
Not every joke is a winner, but it's nailing the vibe it's going for and covering its ass when it walks back an idea.
Let's go, N. Everyone here can bite me.
I'm back, bitches!
So yeah, episode 1 ends with Uzi and En ditching the robot workers, going into self-imposed exile on account of her dad leaving her to die. Which, damn. If she didn't have issues before, she definitely has them now. And she exiled herself assuming he'd kick her out anyway, as this was kind of her fault, so she dipped first to start her new goal in life, killing all humans. Failing to get the Murderbot's scuffed ship back up and running, she has to deal with a far more sassier and less psycho V. But in episode 2, she immediately goes back home, re-establishing the bunker as the default setting for the show, with everyone just kinda having to be cool with the whole hang out with the Murderbot situation. This though is the episode where I do feel like the show really starts to work for me, while also highlighting a few of its weaknesses as well. As the biggest strength of this show is when things start to get scary. The direction for the show is always competent, but when they start going into horror vibes, it gets inspired. And despite the fact that the show is about robots, body horror is a huge thing here. While the previous episode did have some intense moments, I wouldn't really call them scary. Intimidating maybe, but as an audience, we're never really unsettled by what we're watching. Especially once people start dying, they start dropping like flies. You get very desensitized to death very quickly. Uzi got impaled twice in the first episode alone. You kinda have to expect the limbs to go flying at this point. So when the show does get you with violence, it's either an abrupt joke or leading into the horrifying imagery to disturb you, which are both of the show's strengths. They may be robots, but oil does a pretty good job at looking like blood. And when you see a human hand and a robot with fleshy looking growths on it, you immediately clock that something more is going on here with this plot. That this isn't just a robot kills things show. This episode really changes the game for where the series is going. As what was once a simple revenge story now expands into one about exploring the bigger mysteries of what really are the murder drones. Who built them? What is a singularity? What the hell is going on with these things? The questions start piling up, and that mystery is what really makes you want to check out the next episode to see what happens next. As En and Uzi do return to the vault, accompanied by a very funny apology letter.
Oh, all right. Just don't do it again. Get in here, you goobs.
Everyone has lost family to this man, and they just let him in. It's great. Though just to touch back on that being desensitized to death thing, the robots in the vault are just as blasé about people dying as we are, but they are still fully sentient beings who desperately don't want to die. So that kind of starts to create a bit of a dissonance that the show doesn't really know how to deal with yet. As this show is casually killing people constantly, then no one will sweat it or worry about the consequences. As again, V shot a teenager to establish dominance, but then she's just having fun with these kids seconds later, and no one gives a shit that they just watched a murder, or how at the end of the episode V lies about eating all the students Uzi killed, with the teacher just shrugging it off. And like, him I get. He's a teacher, he doesn't give a shit about his students. That completely tracks. But are all these kids orphans then? Is there no one who would be sad or angry at their passing? Or is just every robot made communally, and like the kids with parents are the exception? As these robots are capable of mourning. Doll from episode 3 is motivated to avenge her parents. So it is a thing. People do get angry, yet the nominal good guys are dropping people left and right, and it's never really touched upon. I don't want them to tone down their kill count, but this community of robots never feels big enough that it should be able to sustain at least a dozen deaths per episode, especially without seeing anyone being affected. If they were rebuilding the motherfuckers, sure, yeah, that works. But everyone mostly seems to stay dead, and no one ever sweats it. This isn't a deal breaker. It just narratively feels like something that the show has to keep ignoring so the premise can still happen. We didn't see the genocide that they caused beforehand, so you can kind of write that off as a bit of a joke. But once you see it happen, and it keeps happening, and death in this show, while a joke, is still treated semi-seriously, it does feel like we have to address this at some point. Overall though, really enjoyed the Centipede Monster episode. Uzi and N just continue to be fun together.
I want a freaking ninja star.
This monster is terrifying, with the scenes of it luring its victims being delightfully messed up. But the episode isn't slacking emotionally, as Uzi is left properly traumatized by the whole experience, questioning what are the disassemblers, and after seeing a hologram of her dad get killed, she is now willing to come home. Which... yeah, I'm just gonna get this out of the way. I don't give a shit about Uzi's daddy issues. I care about her, but her dad could drop dead and I would not care in the slightest. Yes, he really is just a guy. He's not an over-the-top monster like some of the other animated parents I've talked about on this channel. He's just a bad, neglectful dad, who also left his daughter to die. And while the show makes me understand why she still cares about him, I'm never sold on him being in anything. As yes, the man who's obsessed with doors would lock away every uncomfortable part of his life. I'm sure he'll have a big redemption moment later. I just haven't had a scene with him where I don't think I can just skip it. Uzi works as a girl with daddy issues, but honestly, this girl can just ditch her dad and start living her best life. So Uzi is dealing with being infected by something called the Singularity. Having no idea what it means or how it fully connects to everything else going on, her dad decided to help by not helping. Hiding all of her conspiracy board stuff, he hires the popular girls to drag her to prom, only for this to turn out to be a somewhat convoluted revenge plot by Doll to kill V. Just to explain how wild this murder plan is, it involves killing every nominee for prom king and queen. Lizzie, Doll's best friend and resident alpha bitch, just being blasé and going along with killing all of these classmates. It also involves convincing V to show up to kill everybody, and then having her instead be crowned prom queen by default, all so that Doll can use her powers to kill her in revenge for her parents. She also speaks solely in Russian and has the same singularity powers as Uzi. Yeah, it's just Robot Carrie. 10 out of 10 episode. They're an item, and I'm buying it. Rip the runner-up. Truly, this episode slapped, and this might be my favorite episode so far. The music and action are going off. The show does a really good job at making essentially magical powers feel at least somewhat sci-fi. Like she's levitating objects, replicating them, teleporting them, coming back from the dead. This is some exorcism shit, but it always feels consistent with the world. But again, the mystery goes deeper, as whatever horrifying stuff has happened to Doll is now apparently Uzi's fate as well. As in the scene that if this wasn't robots, you could not show this on TV, as we see Doll's red-soaked room, filled with dismembered bodies. Her parents' corpses are just set out on the table, with inset box and oils covering the entire room, with Uzi being tempted at the sight of oil. Throw in a final warning from Doll, letting us know that whatever is happening to Uzi, it's just the beginning, and it's going to get worse. Horror and comedy are this show's bread and butter, but it continues to strike gold with N and Uzi's dynamic, as this girl desperately needs a friend in her life. As she's undergoing character growth, she's not just the loner she was in the pilot. She now believes that all drones need to work together, or else the humans might actually win. And this episode does a great job at padding out the extended cast. V is no longer chained up with N, and she is just a delight. I do kind of feel like her and Lizzie have a bit too similar personalities. Like there is a version of the show in my head where you could just combine their character, but they are very fun together, so it's working for me. Plus with the stinger for this episode being the reveal that a human has landed on the planet with another copy of Jay, which settled a bet for me. Jay is just Robot Asuka from Evangelion. Like, am I crazy? Or is that just the vibe completely? Whatever, shit is about to get real, just not in the way we expected.
Does it at least have pictures?
It doesn't. I checked.
Okay, final real complaint of the video. Let's talk about the character designs. I think it is very fun that the show committed to having them all be essentially the same robot. The murder drones are their own special class. They have their own look. But for everyone else though, sharing the exact same body type, with the only real exceptions being their clothes, hair, and a little bit of height. Making them all visually distinct is a challenge. And the fact that I can recognize so many of them is an achievement. That said, outside of the main cast, I do struggle to tell the rest of these extras apart. Episode 4 is a field trip to a camp with a bunch of Uzi's classmates, and my actual reaction to them showing up and dying was just...
Who was that guy?
And part of the problem is that the show's lighting alternates between dark grays, dark reds, or even a really dark blue. The lighting really leaves the colors feeling muted, so the minor characters do tend to blend together, like even more than they already are. So when they all popped up and started getting murdered, I couldn't remember if I had actually seen these characters before, or if they had just appeared for this episode, which I think is a little bit of a problem. Hell, in the second episode, I straight up thought Uzi's dad died. He's the first victim, also wore a mustache, except no. That clearly wasn't him, he didn't have the goggles. And he also had a name tag that I must have missed when I was watching. The main cast, again, mostly spared from this. Everyone else though, I could not tell you at a glance. If this was just black and white, I would struggle to tell you who was who. I feel like the fix for this is really just something as simple as spicing up the headwear. There's too many hard hats and beanies, and I feel like we can just add some more variety there. Now back to the horror. So continuing to make Uzi the best character, having accidentally dragged most of her class out to the woods so that she can check out a lead-on doll, Uzi, despite saving everyone's lives, is still being relegated to being an outcast, with the majority of people not even remembering her name. They're terrified of her, but she's kind of just that girl. In fact, there's so much anti-her, they end up becoming pro-murderers, immediately befriending N and J on account of Uzi claiming that they're all friends. This flares up ye olde insecurities, as she now feels like she's losing her friends.
So, my friend wants to know if you killed her family and are single.
Okay, it's mostly about N, but going off on her own, those feelings keep building up, with V not helping.
Anne's made friends with rocks, by the way. He'll move on just fine.
Then in case you thought whatever was happening to Uzi might be a good thing, she starts to overheat and obsessing over oil, and that eventually spirals into her killing her classmates and eating them, transforming into a creature that looks suspiciously like a disassembler drone. This whole murder demon look is very cool, as I don't feel like it's fully organic, but this show has mentioned nanites, so I feel like this is a nanite organic type synthesis, which leads into the zombie imagery we see later. The horror vibes are excellent, even if I don't know who these people are. Like all the episodes, this one really does a good job at tying it back to Uzi's struggle. As yes, there are some messed up things happening. V knows way more than she lets on. The nightmare fuel is spectacular, but at the end of the day, the personal struggle of the characters always ends up shining through. In Uzi's case, it's her going from feeling like she's not alone anymore to feeling like everyone is going to abandon her. And that leads her to go feral till N shows up, and suddenly all of her problems melt away. As he lets her know it's okay, things are terrifying, like genuinely terrifying. But when they're together, things stop being so scary, and N is undergoing his own growth, starting to be more assertive, less of a doormat that he was in the pilot, standing up to V, protecting Uzi.
Easy there, buddy. Ow. Up we go.
I love the stork, and even V is steadily growing as a person. This show keeps getting better and better with each episode, and I am loving it. I feel like the best thing about Murder Drones is how it just continues to build off of each episode. The characters get more and more interesting, the mystery keeps building as we try to figure out what's going on. What the hell is happening to Uzi? How does it relate to the drone's past? The story is just incredibly engaging. So if you're not hooked by episode 1, episode 2 or 3 is gonna have you locked in. There's some minor issues here and there, but overall I think this whole thing is stellar. The whole team behind Murder Drones at Glitch is fucking killing it, and I can't wait to see where the story goes. But let me know what you all think of the show. I'm definitely thinking about doing more in-depth videos on the various parts of the show that interest me. Yes, parts. But let me know down in the comments. Subscribe to my nonsense, like and share, and yes, I do know that the new episode came out today, so stay tuned for my video on that.